The following is a presentation of the Match Talk Podcast Network.
Hello, wrestling fans. It's time for the World Wrestling Resource Podcast. The World Wrestling Resource was made that you as a wrestler, parent, coach, or fan can have access to all the resources of the very best in the world of wrestling. I'm three-time wrestling writer and broadcaster of the year, Jason Bryant, and I want you to join me, along with John McGovern and world champions Terry Brands and Dennis Hall, as we talk training tips, topical discussion, mental preparation, and more on the World Wrestling Resource Podcast. World Wrestling Resource is sponsored by Defense Soap. Find World Wrestling Resource on Facebook at facebook.com/World Wrestling Resource and follow us on Twitter at WWRESO. And, of course, on the web at worldwrestlingresource.com. Now on to the show as we join John McGovern, Terry Brands, and Dennis Hall. Episode 54 of the World Wrestling Resource Podcast. Jason Bryant here with you today, and the holiday season is upon us. Gifts, eggnog, mistletoe, depending on your particular denomination. There could be a menorah, there could be a star on the Christmas tree. Who knows? But today, one of the byproducts of the holiday season in the sport of wrestling is the Holiday Wrestling Tournament. Today, we're talking with Guy Sako from Defense Soap to talk about one of the byproducts of the byproducts, and that is the funk, what you can do to prevent the funk, whether that be ringworm, whether that be herpes, whether that be impetigo. This guy's got some tips, got some tricks, and, of course, the product that sponsors this program, Defense Soap. Guy, welcome back to the program. It's been a while.
Hi, Jason. How you been?
It's, again, that holiday season. I'm wrapping presents. I'm trying to find cures for paper cuts, not necessarily ringworm.
I got a cure for paper cuts. You're picking that skin up a little bit. You'll be all right.
I've actually done a pretty good job after just completing the garage project that I had no insulation. And, of course, here in Minnesota, it gets cold. It's going to be, on Christmas Day, I think it's going to be 2 degrees. So that garage doesn't stay warm. Now I've got an insulated garage. It's going to be 40, 45 degrees in there during the wintertime. Just fine. So my hands are definitely scratchy and calloused from that. But as we talk about Defense Soap, again, sponsor of this program for the last couple years now, and the company itself, where have you seen the growth? Because it seems to me everywhere I go now, I see Defense Soap at a wrestling tournament.
We just have great partners, guys like you that just help keeping us spread the word. Word of mouth is always better than any advertising, and we support programs such as yours, and you guys have a pretty good voice, and it gets out for us. Also,
another show you guys sponsor, a rather entertaining one, is the Tubbo and Funky show with Ben Askren and Tommy Rowlands, giving the perspectives of NCAA champions. Of course, Tommy being an Ohio guy, you being an Ohio guy, there's that relationship there. But I want to go back and kind of revisit the foundations of why you started this company and why you felt there was a need for a product like Defense Soap.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of a cool story. I coached the West Shore Wrestling Club out of St. Edward's High School over here in Lakewood. And I have 100 some kids in my program. Years back, 2003, 2004, whatever it was, all 100 of my kids had ringworm or impetigo or something going on. I always said, why didn't somebody just make a soap to wash away ringworm? No one ever did. So I did a little bit of research. I knew it was possible because we used to shower with dander shampoos. So I knew that there was a way that we could actually do it. So I did some research, found a healthier way, plus way we could address other infections other than just fungal infections. And I created Defense Soap. The rest is history after that,
So what type of background? You're obviously not a doctor, or you weren't at the time, but where has your education come from, and how much have you learned over the process from the idea to actually completion of this product?
No, the funny part is I was a Cleveland policeman for 25 years. I must have had a lot of time in his own card to look things up. But the Cleveland policeman for 25 years, wrestling coach since the early 90s. And I did a lot of work on Google, talked to a lot of people, and so making business. And I had one of my stops in the zone car was, the hospitals. Policemen always ended up in hospitals, and there was a doctor in the hospitals that was a wrestler. ER doctor. So I did a lot of talking with him, and he helped me, understand a lot of clinical studies and stuff. And we were able to put together a pretty good product. And it's all everybody that was involved in the project, other than the actual soap manufacturers, because they're huge companies, were wrestlers. So they understood what I was trying to do. They understood the need, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, got a variety of products. One that seems to be the one I see at tournaments the most is the wipes, because at some of these big facilities, you will go into places that they're so big they're not even at high school gyms anymore. They're at maybe university field houses and things of that nature. And sometimes these schools don't allow access to showers, and you've basically got funk and sweat from a couple matches. People walking around the bathrooms with the wrestling shoes on, then they go on the mat, and you get your head slammed into the mat a bit, and it's the wipes that have quick wipe down, and that seems to really have been one of the big products that's really kicked you guys up. It's almost like on every wrestling table or trainer's table at a wrestling tournament, at least the ones I've been to.
Yeah, the wipes came out really handy. The reason why I developed the wipes was because we were able to cut our cases of ringworm down about 96% by my first year. But we still had that 4% of cases popping up, but I couldn't figure out because I knew my soap worked. I had, we had clinical studies done, and my microbiologist is actually a wrestler himself. So I mean, we knew we knew it was working, but we still had some cases of ringworm. So we went back and we did some looked at some studies on kill times. And we learned that your flora, which is a layer of bacteria on your body, protects you for about 4 hours once you become infected. So what was happening is the kids weren't showering within that 4 hours, and they were becoming, and that's where the infection set in. So we developed those wipes to wipe the kids down when they left practice, get them home and get them in the shower. Because when you coach the youth, and like you said, if you determine kids aren't showering, little kids don't shower after practice. They go home and shower. So if they don't get in the shower immediately, that 4 hour window closes really fast. And it's not 4 hours after practice. It's 4 hours once you walk into the restroom. You consider yourself contaminated right away. So we developed those wipes.
Yeah, and coupled with the hygiene practices, I remember when I first started wrestling, we didn't leave the wrestling room until we showered. And at the age group levels, when you're younger, you're definitely going to have some kids and parents that might have a little issue with that. So again, the wipes seem to serve that purpose. But as we get into this holiday tournament, and of course the Ironman had a little kerfuffle regarding an athlete from California that had what was appeared to be, at least reported to be, a treated skin lesion that had a node, and then the on-site physician said no, and then it created a controversial situation with that tournament and one of the top one potentially high-profile match in the finals. But when we see this type of situation and tournaments seem to be are obviously the breeding ground when you get teams coming from all over the country, and then they can potentially, one bad case can distribute whether it be ringworm, whether it be herpes, whether it be vitiligo, around the country to various spots. And from your experiences in a tournament setting, what are some best practices that teams can do in addition to using your product to make sure that the spread of these things does not go beyond the wrestling mat itself?
I mean, you just have to stay on top of it. If you're going to wrestle back-to-back matches, like a match every half hour or every hour, you don't want to clean yourself in between matches. And I know that sounds really counterproductive to the whole conversation we're having. But if you take my wipe, or you take an antibacterial and you clean yourself right after you get off a mat, and you're going to step right back on the mat, you just depleted your flora, which is that layer of bacteria. You depleted that flora that's going to protect you from any infection that you do pick up. The time that you want to stay clean at a tournament is when you have several hours in between matches. So if you're going to wrestle and then you're going to sit there, you're in a championship bracket and you're going to sit there for another 4 hours before you come up again, you want to clean in between those matches. If you're in a consolation bracket, and you know how that runs, especially in a 32-man bracket like the Ironman, is back to back to back to back, you don't really want to clean yourself in between those matches. Just clean yourself when you're done. That's important.
Of course, there are extenuating circumstances. I remember one time I was at the Beast, and a kid was really searching for a shower because one of the kids he was wrestling had let's just call it an intestinal issue during the match, and he wanted to shower immediately, and you can't really blame him for that. But of course, those things happen from time to time. But as far as prevention, there's the showering of practice, the usage of the right products. But when you step into a tournament setting, and you've talked about the wiping down or the cleaning between matches, what can coaches, athletes, and I guess in this case parents too, really, especially because with these age groups, the parents have a lot more access in that downtime than the coaches who are running around. What are some tips that the onus can come off of maybe the site to say, okay, parents, you guys can combat this really quickly, really easily. Outside of the cleaning up between matches, what are some just general best practices in terms of just keeping stuff from being contaminated?
Well, the tricky part is, you may have the best practices in the world, but if everybody else at the tournament doesn't do you any good at all. You know what I'm saying? You might be the cleanest guy in the world, but if no one else is doing it, then you're still going to be susceptible to what everybody else is. But tournament directors need to do a couple of things. And I don't mean to sound like gross or anything, but like the restrooms are horrible. You've been to wrestling tournaments. You understand that urinal what you're standing in. Those kids are standing there in their wrestling shoes and they walk right back out on that wrestling mat. That's a really good breeding ground for infection. And so, they make those sole mats. We sell one, but you don't even need that if you can't afford a sole mat. Take a towel, dip it in your mat, clean a bucket, wring it out really good, put that on the side of the mat, have kids clean their shoes before you step on the mat. Coaches shouldn't be walking across the mat with their shoes on because they're standing in the same bathroom that everybody else is standing in. Just common sense stuff like that. If you see something, maybe you got to be responsible. Don't hide your infection. A lot of guys hide infections at the end of the world if Johnny doesn't wrestle today, but he doesn't realize that he could be, especially a tournament there's 400 kids in it, and put a lot of people at risk. There's a little bit of personal responsibility, and the shoes at tournaments are a huge culprit.
One thing it seems like this is a reactive response rather than a proactive response. I think it was West Virginia a year or two ago. They delayed certain weight classes for weeks at a time so that various infections or incubation dates would be gone. When do you guys get the rush of calls? Is it, if something bad happens, okay, we got to get Defense Soap in here. I mean, they should have had you beforehand, but what do you tell a tournament director or a high school administrator that's maybe not from a wrestling background and they're really worried about the safety of their athletes? I mean, how does that conversation typically go?
I try never to use scare tactics because scare tactics only work when people are afraid, right? I just try to use common sense approach at let's just build a hygiene regime that's going to be preventative for skin infections. If you understand, if you educate yourself on what the infections are, if you use my products are great, but doesn't do you much good once you're infected. You got to go to the doctor. And a lot of times I get that call after infections running through a room. It's like, yeah, now we got to clean up that mess and prevent you from getting any more. That's always a tough call. We have a lot of programs that a lot of universities, they order 64 gallons of soap at a time. You figure, what the heck are they doing with that much soap? So they're staying on top of it and they're staying clean because they built a regime around it where this is what we do, this is when we do it, and we're not going to do anything other than this, and they're having great success. Just going at it, on a whim, and then all of a sudden think that you're going to be preventing infection when you're all infected is really the wrong way to do it. It's just a little bit of forward planning and looking ahead. We have tons of articles. We have a free ebook on our website to help educate guys, and none of them are commercials to buy Defense Soap. They're just articles on common sense approach to skin infections, what they are. And I was a culprit of this myself. Before I started my company, I was always getting ringworm. How the hell am I getting ringworm all the time? I use, the strongest antibacterial soap I can find, and and I'm scrubbing down with it and not realizing that I'm creating a better environment for a fungus to grow by eliminating all the bacteria on my skin. So, I mean, just silly little things like that can really make a big difference to a wrestler's hygiene. We have to educate ourselves, and then, of course, use the proper products.
When we look at the prevention aspect, there's your products. Now, what other products out there have you seen, or companies that you guys have found that work well? I know that there's a couple companies that do a lot of disinfecting as far as large spaces, locker rooms, field turf, and things like that. Have you found kind of that right balance between those type of products and your type of products to go, you know what? We've got this thing sniffed out. We're not gonna see a case of this.
Yeah, there's a new technology out. It's a hypochlorous acid. It sounds really scary, but
yeah, it sounds like it would burn my face off.
Nah, we have our new spray. That's a hypochlorous acid spray. I spray right in my eyes to show people how gentle it is. These are FDA approved products, and they're EPA approved products that when you mix it at different levels, that your body produces hypochlorous acid and white blood cells to fight infection. We partner with a company that is able to take that hypochlorous molecule, put it inside of a water molecule, and then you could spray it and mix it. Lower concentrations are for the skin, higher concentrations are for cleaning rooms. And this is the new technology that'll be coming to more and more rooms because it's just so darn effective. It's an FDA approved antimicrobial, which means it kills fungus, bacteria, and viruses. It kills all microbes. Sometimes something will be antibacterial, but it won't be antifungal, or it'll be antifungal, but it won't be antiviral. This hypochlorous technology is safe enough for the spray in your face, anywhere on your body, but it devastates microbes. It's really cool.
Looking at the product information there at defensesoap.com, I mouse over and I look and I see active ingredients. I go, this is the type of stuff that I want to know about. So when you talk about the oils and a lot of natural occurring substances that are part of this, and what have you found that really has kind of been like one of the key ingredients to just, let's say, the bar soap? I mean, we see tea tree oil, which I get sometimes when I'm getting a haircut or something. I'll get that shampoo and they're like, oh yeah, we'll use the tea tree. It gives you that little tingle. But some of these active ingredients, I mean, what was the cool part in discovering that they actually work for combating these things?
Yeah, that was way back when I was doing my research. I did a lot of research on chemicals and soap ingredients, and I always looked at the side effects of them because this was going on my son. These are going on my kids. So I wasn't going to make a soap that I wouldn't sleep well at night putting on my own son, right? Obviously, and I definitely wasn't going to sell anything that wasn't safe. So I kept getting, during all my research, I kept getting pushed back to these natural ingredients of tea tree and eucalyptus oil, and their effectiveness. But it's really important to understand that these are holistics. They're not medicine, and the FDA, the FDA is not going to put a stamp of approval on like natural remedies. We could use it as a preventative, but we always have to be careful how we present it. But incidentally, we do have the very first ever, actually FDA registered antifungal bar soap hitting the market in the next probably another 2 months. All the testing's done on it. It's a soap that we can honestly say will wash your ringworm away, wash your jock itch away, your athlete's foot or whatever. And that's a really big push for us. It's our other soap, this regular defense soap with medicine put in it, and it does a really, really good job. So we're always going to have our original one, but if you have ringworm, now we actually say our soap's going to cure that. Kind of cool. So I came a long way from where we started.
Having the wrestling background and as I alluded to, like some of the other products that are out there that work for locker rooms. I know that football teams have had issues with MRSA because the pads that sit there and that turf is a synthetic substance. It doesn't, naturally it doesn't grow away or get cut. Where have you seen growth outside of the sport of wrestling with your products?
Well, believe it or not, Amazon. Amazon is like the future of all these shopping for all these younger younger generations. They don't really go to the store. Like our wipe on Amazon, number one selling wipe on Amazon. I mean, we're beating pretty major brands. You'd be surprised. Our bar soap is like the fourth most popular brand on Amazon. We also Dial, Irish Spring, Ivory. You would really be surprised at how effective that market is, and that's just to a host of people who suffer from fungal infection and nothing to do with wrestling whatsoever. They're on there buying our soap, so it's really kind of cool.
Did you expect that type of crossover? I mean, it was designed for closeness in preventing wrestling, and then all of a sudden now people are using it to combat their athlete's foot or their this skin funk that they've got, and it's got to be a positive byproduct, so to speak.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what's really cool is like when the combative schools in the military buy, like the Navy combative school or the Marine combative schools, they buy, or we have a cancer clinic that buys, and they use our soap as a pre-surgery scrub for their patients, or dermatology offices buy us and they use our, they sell our soap to their patients. So those are the things that we're like, if they would have known like our very humble means, like a wrestler in a police car trying to figure out a problem for his kid's ringworm, and now it's sold all around the world, like Defense Soap Europe, Defense Soap China, Australia, of course Canada, and the United States. Is crazy how it's taken off.
Yeah, so this is not something you needed to go on Shark Tank to kick off too, because I'm sitting there looking at these products, and of course I watched the show, and I'm sitting like, oh man, I wonder what wrestling product. It's like you're already way ahead of that game in terms of getting the market penetration. But when we look at the sport of wrestling and its prevention and products that go with it, I mean, every 10, 15 years there's this group, but you guys have had some staying power. And what has been the most personally vindicating thing about this whole process, as you said, going from a cop car to trying to figure out how to do this, talking to a friend at a hospital, to now being sold on Amazon and like you said, competing with the big boys from those big companies?
I tell my son Gus, wrestles for UVA. He works for me here now, and I tell him it's about the journey. And if you're not having fun, and if we're not, enjoying what we're doing, let's not do it. I have a pension. I really don't need to be doing this, but I love it. I sponsor all the tournaments that my kids wrestle in. Makes it really easy. If I'm going to wrestling tournament with my team, hey, I'm sponsoring that tournament. I did that through college. That's why you saw me like sponsoring the Southern stuff and stuff like that. I sponsored where Gus wrestled. And it just makes me feel good sitting in the gym, see my product sitting there, see my name on the Jumbotron, something that we built, and yet, we're sharing it with, sponsoring those tournaments aren't cheap. You're putting a lot of money back into the wrestling community that way, and that's the reward. The reward is when you go to a tournament and you have a table set up and some family walks by and they say that they love your product. That's the reward. That's the journey. And we really enjoy that. I still sit at tournaments. Like I'll go to Tulsa Nationals with my little kids. We'll be coaching them and running a table at the same time. It's just kind of cool what we do.
What was the big moment that kind of just spiked everything? I mean, I think, people talk about growth and they look for that hockey stick in terms of, okay, here it is. And then boom, where was that moment for Defense Soap and you guys?
I don't know if we ever had like a single moment. We've had 12 years of steady growth. But we were green before green was like a thing. So I think actually our roots were our big moment. We didn't believe in, like I said, the chemicals that were in the soaps and all the byproducts of soaps, and we eliminated that right from the get-go. And I think by doing that, we actually set ourselves up to succeed now when green and natural products are important, and the FDA is starting to hammer these other soaps that are using the chemicals and stuff. We're 12 years ahead of them. So I mean, it's kind of like was a steady growth, but we just did things the right way, so we never had to worry about it.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I was shopping at Whole Foods before Whole Foods was Whole Foods. People, you were there before the evolution of everybody going green crazy. Now, when we look at the future of the company. You talked about an antifungal that's coming out in the near future. Where is the growth potential? Where is the opportunity to spread, I guess, the word about prevention beyond the sport of wrestling, or I guess continuing with the sport of wrestling? Because every 8 years, that high school and college athlete's going to go away, and you've got to educate another group of athletes. So there's going to be the staying power there. But as far as the advocacy, the prevention, the growth of the brand, what's next from here?
Well, we will always stay, true to our roots of wrestling. People always try to tug us in different directions. They want me to change my marketing, they want to change my packaging, and I'm always super resistant to that. I mean, we're wrestlers, and that's where we're going to stay. But that being said, we have some acne products that are coming out that are really cool. They'll be FDA approved, and we have a natural one and we have an FDA approved version. Same as antifungal bar. There's other sports to go to, but to be very honest with you, the reason why we're successful in wrestling is because we hold ourselves accountable. We have skin checks, and we make sure that we're responsible and we're not spreading infection. They don't have skin checks in football. They don't have skin checks in hockey. They don't have skin checks in any other sport other than wrestling. So, we'll always be here, and it's always a good market for us because we hold ourselves accountable. The other sports, they don't necessarily have the same amount of urgency to be clean as we do. I know it sounds silly, but if you stop and think about it, it's 100% true. The reason why we sell soap in wrestling, we do well there, is because there's a need and because we're all held accountable to it.
When we look at the prevention and treatment tips, what are some, again, you are not a doctor, but you've been around the sport enough, and you've developed a product that combats some of these things. But say you've got the infection, so you've got a ringworm. What are some of the best practices that you've learned about treatment and being able to get these things taken care of and get your athletes back on the mat as safely and as quickly as possible?
Well, ringworm's a fungal infection. It's the same infection as athlete's foot and the same infection as jock itch, caused by tinea. There's another one that's called tinea versicolor that people get their sunspots. Tinea should be killed topically. You should, find over-the-counter medicine that you like that will kill topically and use it topically. A couple tips on that, though. Once you kill a ringworm, once you don't see that ringworm anymore, treat it. You got to treat that area for 3 weeks after you no longer see it, or it will come back. It's not a new ringworm. It's the same ringworm, and just haven't killed it all the way. So we always suggest that you treat it for 3 weeks. And if you're treating a little kid, this sounds really silly, but we use a Sharpie. Take a black magic marker, Sharpie, put a dot right in the middle of that ringworm, and treat that dot every day for 3 weeks after it's gone. And you put the dot on top of the old dot, so you're treating the right area, and it reminds you to do it. So that's really good. If it's in your hair, which a lot of kids suffer from, we always suggest going to the doctor. You're probably going to get prescribed a pill when you go to the doctor. We're not super fond on that pill because it could actually, cause damage to the liver and the kidneys. It depends on how big your wrestler is and how many times he's been on it. But in the hair, 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up in the doctor's office on that. We always suggest using a good dandruff shampoo for wrestlers. I own Defense Soap. I'm 50 years old and I'm bald, and I still use Head and Shoulders because I know it's going to keep the fungus out of my hair. But we always suggest a good fungus shampoo when you're on the mat. A good dandruff shampoo when you're on the mat. They all have antifungals in them, and it'll keep your hair clean. Infections like impetigo, that could be a nightmare if you don't understand what's going on. But we go back to, like we said, we need to educate ourselves a little bit. We could really fight infection a lot better. Impetigo is strep throat. It's caused by the strep bacteria. So when kids are coughing and hacking in your room, they should really be out of the room, because if they have strep throat and they're coughing in your room, they're just spreading impetigo all over your room. If you think about it, impetigo on most people is usually around their lips and their mouth and their lips, because impetigo comes from strep throat. They cough, and that bacteria lands on their lips, and then that becomes infected. Impetigo can only attack damaged skin. If it lands on healthy skin, impetigo will not hurt you. If it lands on like chapped lips, cracked lips, or a matte burn or a pimple, you're going to get an infection there. So what you need to do during the wintertime, especially when people are sick, you need to always treat any damaged skin. Keep your skin healthy. Don't let matte burns go unchecked. Don't, kids pop pimples all the time. Those things need to be cleaned properly to prevent impetigo from spreading. I really like polysporin for impetigo. You might want to do a Google search, look it up. Polysporin is, we all know what neosporin is. Polysporin is sporin that's made specifically for the strep bacteria. Always consult your doctor or whatever, but once you start doing a little research and you look at polysporin, you'll see what it's made for. And I've seen polysporin clear up impetigo in as few as 3 days. So it's a pretty easy one if you understand what's going on. That's pretty much it. Herpes tends to come from wearing down of the system. College freshmen always suffer from herpes, but that's nothing that you could really prevent. That's stress. That's where that comes from.
One thing that did impact the NCAA wrestling this year was a rule change about facial hair, and that beards up to a certain length are allowed. And you had talked about these infections through damaged skin. A lot of people were complaining, razor burn and things like that made your face susceptible to you got a clean shave and boom, you're slammed right down on the mat. There's a prime opportunity for infection to spread. Do you think the beard rule the NCAA has enacted is actually going to cut down on skin infections on the face?
I imagine it will. You still just have to clean that beard really good because that'll hold a ton of bacteria. But hopefully it's holding enough the right bacteria so that when an invading microbe enters it gets killed by it. But no, shaving is damaging to the skin. Any razor burn, nick, scratch. I mean, you get damage to your skin and not even see it just because it's microscopic. And we're talking about microbes. So, I mean, if you could actually see damage to your skin, imagine what it looks like to a microbe. It looks like the Holland Tunnel. It's going to go right through it easily. But no, I think that the kept beard is better than shaving for wrestlers. Absolutely.
Been talking to Guy Sako, founder of Defense Soap at defensesoap.com. Defend what you have built, sponsors the Tubbo and Funky show, sponsors this program with the World Wrestling Resource, and of course tournaments around the country. The Southern Scuffle is coming up. You guys have been part of that. Now, sitting back, what's your take on the college wrestling season? We've been talking a whole lot about the business, but you're a wrestling fan too. I mean, what's your take on Penn State, Ohio State? You're an Ohio guy. Your kid wrestling the ACC. Let's talk a little wrestling.
Yeah, I still have a hard time conceiving that Penn State ranked number 2 with 5 returning national champions. To me, that just blows my mind. And I've seen the numbers 100 times on the paper and everything, but to me, it just blows my mind that that's even possible.
Yeah, it depends on the rankings,
my boy,
too.
Dean Heil. Yeah. Dean just got beat. He was one of my youth wrestlers, 2-time NCAA champion. He just lost to Meredith the other day, so that shook us up a little bit over here. Hopefully he gets back on track. But yeah, no, it'd be an exciting season. It'd be a very exciting season. And then the NCAAs are here, Cleveland. So it's going to be really cool. I don't know if you remember the last NCAAs in Cleveland, but I think that people enjoyed the town pretty much.
Yeah, I believe 1997 or 1998. I was not yet going to the Nationals at that time, but I do remember people talking about Cleveland. I think that was, and since then the flats have been closed and reopened. So it's been a couple years since I've been in Cleveland. And I had Jamie Gibbs on our Division III show yesterday on the Mad Talk Podcast Network. Division III, Baldwin Wallace is serving as the host institution as Division III championships are in Cleveland the week before the Division I championship. So, Cleveland area wrestling fans going to have a lot of stuff to be talking about this year.
Yeah, we have a lot. The only disappointing part is our junior high states are the same weekend as the NCAAs. So that's kind of, I think they're moving the schedule around so most of us can coach our kids and get back over to watch the NCAAs, but that's kind of goofy. But a fair warning, anybody coming to NCAAs, be prepared. It's St. Patrick's Day, and St. Patrick's Day in Cleveland is insane. So that's going to be, and the parade route is right where the NCAA tournament's at. So it's going to be super insane. But that area over there is really, really nice, really, really built up. And if anybody needs any, I'm appointing myself like a personal ambassador to wrestling in the city of Cleveland. So if anybody needs any suggestions where to stay or anything, just get a hold of me on my website. I'm more than happy to point people in the right direction on that. Otherwise, Cleveland could be a big place.
Big place. I've been there a couple times for a couple different events. U.S. Open, been there for the JOs back in the day, the old public hall, the convention center. So a lot of wrestling going to be coming out of Northeast Ohio in the next couple months. And Guy, it's always been a pleasure to talk with you about your product and, of course, your sponsorship of this program and wrestling in general, because you provide a valuable service and your knowledge, not just because it's a sponsored program, because it is needed in this sport. And we've seen the push for skin protection and this type of preventive cleanliness really take hold. And your company's been on the forefront of that since the get-go. So I know as a wrestling fan, I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that too. And we're easy to find. Just jump on defensesoap.com or type in Defense Soap. We have a ton of resellers around the country. If you don't want to buy directly from us, you can buy from anybody. But if you have a school or your team or a coach, give me a shout. We always take care of you.
Subscribe to the World Wrestling Resource Podcast by going to WWRpodcast.com and check it out on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, or wherever you find your podcasts. World Wrestling Resource at worldwrestlingresource.com.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.